Yes! 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 Ha! That was it. Ah! Yes! Oh! 40 hours. Maybe closer to 50.
As you guys probably figured out, this video is a guide on how to be an average gamer and still be able to do the Dungeon Prophecy solo without having any taken mods, because I have none and I was still able to do it without being insanely awesome. So that is going to be this whole purpose of this video. It's going to be mostly geared for warlocks because that's what I did this on. However, I will do my best to try and give some ideas for hunters and titans, so that way it might help you guys out a little bit. But the main focus when we're going through this guide is going to be things like weapons, strategies, and things like that that don't necessarily have to hinge on what character you're on, because those same tactics and techniques could be used on a hunter and a warlock. So before we get on into the video, make sure you guys subscribe to my channel. When I started doing things of soloing, hard raid challenges, lots of hard stuff within the game, so that way I can try and give you guys how an average gamer was able to pull this off. And then with Beyond Light coming on November 10th, I have a feeling my guides are going to really escalate as far as how many I am making, because we have all these new things like Vault of Glass is coming back. We've got a new raid. We got like 200 and some at least power levels to go up. There's new exotics, and so there should be lots of games, lots of reviews and opinions that you guys would probably be interested in sharing and hearing about, especially because my channel is all about efficiency. I spent about 50 hours trying to get this solo dungeon done, and if you guys watch my video and through its entirety and use these techniques, I bet you guys you'll probably get it done in less than 10 hours. So hopefully I can help you guys all out. Also, if you would like to be a part of a clan, eventually we have a Discord. It's about 250 to 300 people in there right now. We got a couple of Xbox clans. We got like a PC clan. We're adding another PC clan, and we are looking at adding PlayStation. We have enough people in our clan that feel strongly enough about what we do in our community that they're willing to put together some donations to try and make it with bots and whatnot, where we can make all that happen. So I think that's very telling of the kind of community that we have going on over inside of the eventual Discord server and clan. But if you don't want to be in the clan, but you like to be a part of the Discord server, just subscribe to the channel, join the clan. I have a link for the Discord server down below, and we'll give you the role of Caboose, so that way you guys can be inside of that clan, of the Discord, without having to be inside of the clan. Also, to help me out and to help out everyone else, make sure you guys are liking the video and commenting on it down below. I would love to know what kinds of things you're like, oh dang, I didn't even think about this, or just anything in general related to this video and this topic that will just help more people to see the video, get more engagement, and it'll really help me out. So if you're someone that can't really look through my links that I have down below to support my channel, like through Redcon1, which I'm an affiliate with, or Shop Tagger, a really absolutely free way to support the channel would be to like, comment to the video, and share it, as well as subscribe to the channel. Alright, so now that we're done with the intro, let's go ahead and start talking about this guide and how we do this dungeon. We're going to kick it off first with some kind of broad things to really keep in mind throughout the entire dungeon. So there's really only a few things that I would encourage you guys to really keep in mind for the entire dungeon. Number one would be, you do not need to rush anything. The only thing that really has any kind of a time limit with any sort of a consequence as far as like a wipe would go is in the boss fight at the very end, when you have that dark entropy, which we'll talk a little bit more when we get to that part of the video in the boss fight section. Otherwise, there's really nothing much that's timed. Of course, the moats have time limits to them, because I guess I should have mentioned this earlier. I am assuming in this guide that you kind of really already know how the fight works, so those moats do have timers with them. But that's really pretty much it. Everything else is, you can go at your own pace, so no worries there in regards to trying to rush anything, because I found myself oftentimes killing myself because I get all excited and like, ooh, I'm gonna make this work, and I would die. So make sure you guys really take your time. You can do things like kill all the knights in the world. I, for example, would sometimes have phases where I would kill upwards of 10 knights trying to get an angle that I really needed, when I really only need to have a total of 2 as far as their moats would go. The other thing I would really mention that you guys try to think about is you need to really pay attention to cover. There's different parts of this area where there's really not a whole lot of ads that will either rush you in that area, or you can at least block off fire from many different angles by using cover. So kind of looking around in the rooms, pay attention to where you're at in the boss areas, and you guys will be just fine as far as taking a lot of damage goes. Then lastly, try to figure out the best build that works well for you. You could do things with Charged with Light, you could do things with Warmind Cells, whatever. Like, I personally didn't really use either of those, but I did use lots of health. I had lots of health builds. So if you guys are doing things like Hunter and Titan, and where you don't maybe have as many health options, I would suggest Hunters. You guys would look a lot at invisibility builds, being able to go invisible as much as possible, as well as then we got Titans trying to do things maybe where you have lots of barricades and be able to shut yourself off to ads and cause lots of, I guess, explosions and damage as much as possible with things like bubble and barricades. So those are kind of my general tips of what to do and things to really keep in mind. The most important one would be take your time. You do not have to rush. This dungeon clear took me over 5 hours, but some of that was because I was figuring out what works well for me. I'm pretty sure it'd take me less than 3 hours if I was to do this again, knowing what I know now. So now we're going to go ahead and get on into the video with more specific things regarding encounters. So we're going to first up talk about the first encounter, which is really unlocking your way into the dungeon. To enter the dungeon is really simple. All you really have to do is generate motes of light corresponding to the dark and corresponding to the light. Just in case you're not completely sure what I mean, if you kill knights while standing in the dark, they will make dark motes, get 5, put them in a pillar, and that pillar then cleansed. Then the same thing applies to the white motes. There's really not a whole lot to give you guys here for tips as far as loadouts and stuff. This is a rather simple encounter. There are folks that will in fact be able to sword cheese this, but I try hard these days to not use cheeses unless it's something I'm going to be doing all the time and trying to speedrun, so I did not cheese. I just did it all as legit. So there's really nothing else to explain on this. Maybe just use some healing things like Well or Devour or Bubble. Whatever you feel most comfortable with will be fine. For weapons, I generally prefer Wither Horde, because you can just lob a Wither Horde round and then hide in the light or the dark, whichever one you need, and get the color motes that you need to get that right pillar I guess cleansed, so you can then move on. The only tip that I would maybe give that perhaps isn't universally known would be you can use that first area that you enter, that you have to unlock the pillars we have to cleanse for those motes. You can use those knights again to do that second room. You have enough time to kill those knights in that first little area you have to unlock, and then swing those motes on over and use those to cleanse the second area, which is also the last area that lets you open up into the actual dungeon. So hopefully this helps you guys out. Short and sweet. Now let's go ahead and talk about our first real encounter, our Phalanx boss. This is our first real actual boss fight inside of this dungeon. Now this can be very tricky and can take quite a while to figure out. So for weapons, I would highly suggest that you guys use get a good old Wither Horde on your kinetic slot. Then for your energy, I would suggest something that can be a little bit more like close to mid-range, something like Recluse and SMG. If you're not using Recluse because things have sunset or you just don't have it, things like the Seraph weapon, submachine gun would be really good. The Aikilo submachine gun is also a very good choice, and I also like having sidearms like Full Remedy as well as the drain. I would just put things on like Taken Spec onto any weapon that is legendary, and you're able to put that Taken Spec mod onto that weapon because you do extra damage to Taken enemies. And then for that energy weapon, something like that SMG, I personally prefer having something like dynamic sway reduction and vorpal rounds on, but really anything will be fine as long as it can kill ads relatively quickly and is something you are comfortable with using. For your heavy slot, I would really suggest a good sword, especially Falling Guillotine. Now for in Beyond Light, the meta may have changed just a little bit, but I would still recommend using a sword unless we have some kind of a game-breaking new weapon type. A sword will still be great because sometimes you get rushed by ads, including those knights. If you do that Falling Guillotine heavy attack where you spin around in a circle, it's really good at being able to save your bacon from dying and then losing whatever progress you have acquired inside of this encounter. Now for how you actually approach this encounter, slow and steady wins the race. I'd highly suggest you guys use these little pillars. You can kind of see me hiding behind a lot inside of the gameplay. It's opposite of where you first spawn in, and you kind of see that wall where you would start the encounter. It's those like two walls that are on the other side of that ball, like you're looking right at them when you first spawn in on this encounter. I would spend most of your time hiding between there. When you first start the encounter, make sure you guys take care of all of the scions before you worry too much about trying to get the appropriate motes of light dropped. I also would sometimes accidentally kill everything, and no big deal. If you kill all the knights, more knights just spawn in, and then every so often more of the scions will spawn in. So then you just kill all those scions, then you worry about getting down your moats. I would also suggest you guys really consider doing the lowest pillar moats when you have the least number of ads. I would try really hard to do those lowest moats, so the pillars are closest to the ground, when I only had one knight and the boss walking around in the field area. Because if there's more than that, it gets really easy to die by accident. Things happen like you get booped, knights put down fire. When there's only one knight, not that big of a deal to hop on those lower pillars. And then if you're doing something like I did with Warlock and Well, I would sometimes leave that lowest pillar so that way I could just bank it and then immediately drop down my Well on top of the boss to begin damage. Those are kind of two things I really consider you guys to look at when you're incorporating your strategies. Now for Warlock, I did try using Devour quite a bit, but I found because of how amazing swords are for damage, it made much more sense to use a Well. It also forced me to play more passively, because instead of feeling rushed to get a kill to get that Devour to keep going, I knew I just kind of would chill out and just be like, hey, whatever, not a big deal. Devour for me gave me a sense of urgency that really gets you killed a lot and loses all kinds of time and progress within this entire dungeon, and I actually used Well for basically everything throughout the dungeon. There's only one encounter where I used Devour for the whole thing, and then another one where I kind of flipped back and forth between Well and Devour. So for this encounter for Warlocks, I would really suggest you guys use Well. For Titans, I would go with Bubble, because you can put a bubble down on top of your boss, especially if you got Helm of Saint 14. It's a pretty safe way to be able to do lots of boss damage. As for boss damage, the fastest way by far is to sword that guy to death with the Falling Guillotine that's got Relentless Strikes, Whirlwind Blade, and or Surrounded. So Relentless Strikes or Whirlwind Blade, or Relentless Strikes and Surrounded. That's what I would use for your boss damage. Now when you're dealing this boss, just do as much damage as you can. Once ads start spawning in, you'll have some of the little hobgoblin guys that will shield the boss. So just as best as you can, just kind of take some of them out. I found myself, for the most part, once those hobgoblins hopping in, that's kind of, for me, was when my consistent damage phase was over. I would then just kind of leave my little boss area, I would drop some Wither Horde rounds on the ground, trying to kill those hobgoblins, and then just do whatever I could to the boss as it wasn't shielded. And that for me worked really well. I was able to get about 75% of the damage dealt to the boss in one damage phase. Now I'm sure someone out there can one phase this sucker and get it on over with, but I would imagine most of us are going to fall into the camp of needing to do 2 damage phases. So again, slow and steady, don't put yourself out there, use your corners, watch that cover, Do things like keep your sword out when you're running, because it's not uncommon for the boss to boop you. One of the other reasons why I liked using a sword in this encounter is because if I got booped, I could flip to my sword and sword back into the field of play. And I would also do this other strategy. Whenever I knew I was going to run behind cover, I did my best to remember to take out my sword, because sometimes it's a little bit tricky getting booped, flipping to your sword, and then swording back before your warlock would lose too much time and you kind of just fall off the map. That was just me. Hunters, you might have a little bit easier of a time because of how your jump works. Titans, maybe you're going to have a little bit more of a time like a warlock, or needing to keep a sword out is a little bit more of a necessity. But for all three characters, sword's probably going to be a really good way for damaging the boss. I would do Wither Horde, then sword. Wither Horde, then sword, deal with adds. And then keep that sword out to swing across. Now lastly, for mods on armor, I would suggest you guys have things that are catered towards what you're going for. For warlocks, try to have more things like discipline, intellect, and recovery, so that way you get more of your wells, you get more healing grenades, and you get more of those healing rifts. For Titans, you might want to put more into resilience, so that way you get more of your barricades that you can pop up. For Hunters, you definitely want to have as much mobility as possible, so that way you get all the dodges. Now, I could see you guys going either way of using the way of the Trapper or the other tree Mobius Quiver, so that way, because Mobius, when you throw down your little smoke grenade, your invisibility lasts for longer, but you have to be able to throw down that grenade and not punch an ad by accident. Whereas top tree, your invisible is a little bit shorter, but you just have to dodge. And using something like Worm Husk Crown, where you can dodge and get your health back, will be really nifty. Or doing something like Six Coyote, so that way you get 2 dodges, will also be really good. That way you can kind of take some damage, dodge, get away, and from invis, get behind cover, and then go back for whatever you were doing. And I guess for the rest of the mods on armor pieces, really have on heavy ammo scavengers, have on special ammo scavengers. I would do a sword ammo scavenger from the artifact, the seasonal artifact from Season of Arrivals. Well, I don't know if it'll be around for Beyond Light, but hey, for the Season of Arrivals, you guys can use that sword scavenger. That way you get more heavy ammo, you get more special ammo, because that's going to be something you really rely on when doing this encounter. Alright, let me know down below if this guy's helped you guys out with trying to get through this. Once I got some good practice in, I could usually do it within a couple of tries, and usually within an hour at the longest. So hopefully this is something that gives you guys some good intel. Now we're going to go ahead and move on to the Wastelands. Much like the very first encounter where we unlock the dungeon, the Wasteland doesn't really require a whole lot of, I guess, extra special tips. Just use something like you can use to keep yourself alive. This is the one encounter where I used Devour the whole time. I would suggest you guys do something with some long range, like Trinity Ghoul, because you're going to have those Hobgoblin snipers, and those guys are absolute priority. Xenophage would be very good in this encounter as well, if you need something longer range to take out those Hobgoblins. I would mention more about Mountaintop, but with the sun setting coming for Beyond Lights before too long, we might need something else that's longer range. So there we go, with Trinity Ghoul or Xenophage would do wonders. Now you could use a sword instead of Xenophage and have that bow equipped in the kinetic or energy slot, because there are going to be some adds that are a little bit beefier guarding each of those little taken blights, and a sword will get rid of them rather quickly. I also should let you guys know, when you're inside of each of those blights, killing that little orb so you destroy the blight, you can kill yourself. You lose a little bit of health when you get inside of that blight. And I did notice when I was running with teammates when I was first learning the dungeon back in the beginning of Season of Arrivals, that you can kill yourself if you shoot a mountaintop inside of that blight. So just kind of keep that in mind. If you're using this guy to try to help you out with something like Solo Flawless, you definitely don't want to accidentally blow yourself up because you used something inside of a blight that you shouldn't have. So I always played it safe by using my energy slot or whatever it was that wasn't explosive in order to kill those blights. Now once you've killed one group of 3, go to that orb, it takes off, and you do that whole cycle 3 times, and then we get into what is probably one of the longest and most mentally taxing encounters, which is the Cube Room. The cube room was something that probably took me the longest out of all the encounters to not only be able to beat, but to be something that I felt kind of comfortable with when, I guess, doing this dungeon. Because I do have the hopes of doing a solo flawless. I'm not sure for sure when I'll do it or if I'll be able to actually do it, but that is something I am hoping to do. Now, for this cube room, there are a lot of specifics that I think we need to go over, and this might take a little bit. So grab some popcorn and pop up your feet, because we're going to learn some things together. The first thing is, this is where you really have to take your time and keep note of how the mechanics work. Just real briefly, you have to still do the whole deal with killing knights to get their moats and banking the appropriate pillar. So that's something you gotta really keep attention to. But in order to get knights to spawn, you kill the snipers. Then the sniper, when you kill them, the knight spawns in. When you kill a knight, a sniper spawns in. And that's something you really got to be aware of, because the snipers can either really surprise the crap out of you and ruin that run when you're doing your whole deal, or you might kill a sniper and then just forget that the knights spawn on you. Either one can happen, and did happen to me when I was learning this for the first time. So that's something to keep in mind. Now, for weapons, I would highly suggest doing something long range that's like a one hit for those snipers, besides just xenophage. So something like a bow would do pretty well. If mountaintop is still at least a viable option, that would be fantastic. Otherwise, xenophage is probably what you need to use. I'd also suggest you guys have on things like machine gun ammo reserves, machine gun ammo finder, as well as 2 special ammo finders and 2 heavy ammo finders. Now, when it comes to other mods, you could do things like Hive Barrier because of the knights, but some of those barrier mods are going to be eliminated in Beyond Light, which is part of why we haven't talked very much about them. But if you're doing this within the 2 weeks before Beyond Light, as I am recording, then use those mods to your desire, because they are in fact better than not using them. The key is going to be to have as much machine gun ammo as possible, because xenophage is going to probably be your best friend for this encounter. Now, something I want you guys to also remember is that the snipers spawn in the same spots for each room variant every time. So every time you start this encounter in that first room, they will always spawn one right above that pillar, or that first black, I guess, pillar off to the right side of the room as you're looking at when you spawn in. And then you will always have that one to the left on that wall directly across from you when you first spawn in inside of this cube room. And then every room after that is the same deal. So if you do this encounter enough, you will spawn in and know exactly where those snipers are at. And so now we're going to talk about the order of operations when it comes to what to do when inside of this room. When you first spawn into a room, I would always suggest finding where you would have to bank, or what pillar you have to cleanse immediately. And if you don't find it within that couple of seconds as you're dropping into the room, then first priority should then become the snipers. So we'll always go look for Toland, get the snipers, deal with ads, and then you would try and figure out what makes the most sense to kind of set up shop when you're trying to get things situated, so that way you can quickly kill those 2 knights and cleanse that pillar. Something I found to be really nifty was with Well. I would have on Phoenix Protocol, so that way I get tons and tons of super energy back from getting kills inside of that well. So when I got everything kind of cleared out and I could kind of take a second to breathe, I would then say, okay, look at here, I need dark moats. Here's a dark area that's kind of close to where I have to bank, so let's put my well down there. Because when you kill those knights and you're booking it back with that moat, you can't really do a whole lot. You can only throw a healing grenade if you are a warlock, and the other 2 classes unfortunately can't really do anything, because if you're a hunter and you dodge, you lose the moat. If you're a titan and you put up your barricade, you lose the moat. And all 3 classes use the super, you lose the moat. So you want to try to have things situated so that way you can quickly grab those 5 moats and get right back to the pillar, because those snipers will be spawning in and they can kill you rather quickly. So once you bank and cleanse that pillar, you probably got about 3 seconds or so before those snipers go away, which is plenty of time for them to kill you. So my preferred strategy when I was on Warlock would be to put a well basically on top of that pillar that you have to cleanse. So that way when you're running back with the moats, you're inside of a well when you're slamming, and that gives you plenty of time to kind of either take some cover, maybe take a pot shot at one of those snipers, or just deal with taking some damage, because they will disappear rather quickly. Now once they are gone, what I did was I would then clear out the whole room, just kind of get all my ammo back. That's why I have on all those ammo reserves, and build up my super, and then I would go and activate the pillar to go to the next room. It is worth noting you do not have to stand in that pillar in the middle of the room that puts you into the next room. You can just run over it, hide behind something, and you will eventually get teleported into that next room. So if you're someone that's like ready to go, or you're like, I just gotta get out of this room, get me out of here, you don't have to stand on that pillar. You will just get sucked off, which is kind of nice because when you're on the pillar, if there are ads in the room, you are exposed to taking some fire. Now, the overall way I did this, and it takes a long time. I would use sometimes 2 supers in a room. So what I would do is I would get kind of everything situated. Sometimes when I spawn into a next room, I would drop my super, and then I would get the sniper's gun. I would kind of get the ads to a reasonable level. I would take assessment of the room, and then I would run around avoiding the knights, but kind of trying to loop them to where I wanted them to go according to the plate or like the moat color I needed, while taking out ads. And I get my second super, use my super and wherever felt best, that way I was best set up to get the kind of moats I needed, and then I would go grab the moats, bank, and then wait again to get a super. So sometimes I would wait 2 times to get 2 wells, because I always wanted to go into the next room with a well. That was just something I didn't always need it, but I definitely wanted to make sure I had that option, because I would really hate to have to keep wiping over and over just because of not being patient. Now, the first time I ever beat this thing, I would do stuff like hop up really high. When you're in each of those rooms, you can kind of use those boxes that the snipers sit on. You are able to get up there yourself, and you can avoid a lot of fire. The downside with that is you're really exposed while you're trying to get up. And then when you're getting down, you're kind of exposed again, and you have limited options for where you can get all the ads cleared out of. So I wouldn't really suggest using that strategy unless you're someone that's maybe trying to get more comfortable with just kind of the general flow of things. The time where I actually beat this the fastest was where I would just go into a room and I would use the boxes and stuff around the room to my advantage as cover, and I actually never did that jumping thing. But the first time I cleared it, I would use the boxes to get up, so I would easily be able just to kind of chill and build up a super. So again, just a really quick summary. So you spawn in, look for the orb or Toland, kill the snipers. Then you kind of figure out where the knights are at, kill all the ads, try your best to set yourself up where you're most protected and most able to be able to stay alive to kill the knights, as well as be able to run back and have something to help you stay alive. Hunters, unfortunately, you're just going to have to slam, go invis. Titans, maybe you could put a bubble over your pillar you have to cleanse, and warlocks, you could do a rift and or well. Now for warlocks, I would also suggest doing the well, because you could do things like charge up that grenade to give you that divine protection, which is great, because if you don't have a rift, or if your well runs out and you don't have a well and you're about to slam, you can just charge that grenade, throw it on the ground in front of you, and the snipers need a couple more shots before they can actually finish you off. Alright, this is probably the hardest encounter for me. It took me the most number of hours, probably about 12 in total between my 4 or 5 different runs, including the time I spent to actually beat the whole dungeon. So prepare to be there for a while. It's really important and useful to get used to this room and just memorize where ad locations are, where the snipers are at, and then be able to kind of spot quickly where the knights go. Because while this encounter does seem rather random and chaotic, if you do it enough times, the only thing you really notice is the only thing that changes is the pillar and what kind of moats you need. Everything else, where the ads spawn, even where the knights spawn and the sniper spawn, is pretty consistent throughout the entirety of this encounter every time you do it. It's just the moat and the pillar you need that tend to change. Everything else is all good and kosher. Hopefully this helped you guys out. For mods, again, heavy special ammo finders, ideally use something like Xenophage, and then have some good ad clears. Maybe you have like a bow with explosive arrow, or use a good SMG. For me, I use Mountaintop, Recluse, and Xenophage pretty much the whole time for this encounter. So that's all I use. Should work just fine for you guys as well. So now let's go ahead and talk about the next encounter, which is the Sparrow Race. Thankfully, just like the first encounter to enter the dungeon and our Wastelands encounter, this one's rather straightforward. Now, I found there's really two fantastic options. You can either go slow and steady by doing just walking and jumping, and you kill all of those slampers, and then you kind of take your time just taking out the ads inside of those triangles, and you will for sure get to the end. Or you can use the Sparrow and actually run your way down. If you're a power that is of, I guess for me, 1080, which is I guess about 15 over what is actually recommended for the end, then you will probably be fine. And if you're comfortable with driving a Sparrow, then whatever. I would, however, encourage you guys to think about if you're trying to do this solo flawless and go with whatever is safest for you. So for me, that would mean walking and just taking the ads and taking my time. When I get to my solo flawless, that's for sure what I'm going to do. I practiced that. I had a bizarre RNG thing happen that probably would never ever happen again, which is I got sucked up into the tunnel like we were supposed to do, and the ad got sucked up as well, and the ad hit, like, gave me a shoulder tap and it killed me. So then I was like, whatever, screw it, and I used my Sparrow, and that worked just fine. So those are kind of the two ways to go about it. For weapons, Xenophage and Mountaintop will be your best friends because you can basically unlimited range take out those ads if you're preferring to do the slow and steady way of doing those ads. So now let's wrap this video up by talking about the boss fight. The boss fight is very taxing, can be extremely stressful, but it's not nearly as bad as it would seem. I would highly suggest you guys use the following loadout, which would be you have something like Anarchy, Xenophage, Sword, Trinity Ghoul, and some sort of a grenade launcher like Mountaintop, or perhaps something like Orwing's Maul with concussive blinding grenades. Now, when we're going to be talking about this encounter, there's going to be lots of things that we can do to try and make this even easier. If we're going to go the approach of me, the average gamer, there's going to be some switching back and forth of supers, and there's going to be a lot of waiting for supers to charge up. If we're trying to speed run this whole thing, you definitely could, but you're going to probably need to get a lot more practice than I've currently had at this encounter. The main point of this video is to try to give folks such as myself, or perhaps average gamers, some more detailed guides and opinions and strategies of how to go about beating this whole dungeon, and so there's going to be some things that are more applicable and the general person would be able to pull off. So that's going to be kind of what we're going to be talking about. Now, we're going to be focusing on the Warlock side of things. If you are a Titan or a Hunter, you can do the same deal. However, I don't think you would need as much of the super changing. If you are a Warlock, or excuse me, if you are a Hunter, I would go with one of the tethers and make sure you have on oppressive grenades. If you are a Titan, I would probably just do bubble and make sure you have oppressive grenades, perhaps the void wall, just because the magnetic grenade does not last very long. And then if you're a Warlock, we're going to be using two supers. We're going to be using Well for the section where we are unlocking the damage phase, and then we're going to be using the slow bomb, the one that sits in the vortex with oppressive grenades for our actual damage phase. So much like the cube room, it's going to be a very similar idea. You're going to spawn in, you're going to see where your different pillars are at, and then you're going to make sure you go about clearing those scions as fast as possible. Now, the big difference between here and the cube room is once you kill the scions, you seem to have significantly more time before more scions spawn in. So you can kill those scions, and you got plenty of time to handle those knights before more scions spawn in. And when you do drop in, I would highly suggest Warlocks you have on something like Phoenix Protocol. I would drop into a room, put down that well in the area that kind of made more sense with the first little Kel Echo I wanted to take care of, and then I would go and take care of the ads inside of my well. I get most of my well back, and then I would deal with those knights. Now the loadout I would use for the Kel room is I would use the Mountaintop in my kinetic, I used Trinity Ghoul with the finished Catalyst in my energy slot, and then I used a sword in my heavy slot inside of that room where you're trying to get rid of the Kel Echo so you can actually damage the Kel and ultimately kill him. Now once I got all those platforms down, I would then switch around some armor. But to take out those ogres, what I did was I would slam that moat onto that pillar, then I'd go hide by one of those little boxes on the side, charge up my divine protection grenade. When that ogre spawned in, I would drop that grenade on the ogre and rush him with my falling guillotine. That worked incredibly well. The Trinity Ghoul was fantastic for clearing out the adds, the scions really quickly and leaving me with just the knights, and the mountaintop with Taken Spec on would usually two-shot the knights, which was pretty fast, because if you have on a armor piece with enhanced grenade launcher, which will have some different variant of what that is with Beyond Light, it was really rather quick to take out those knights. And so what I would do is I would take out one knight with half health, then I'd take out the other knight to half health, and then depending upon where they were located at, I might rush them with the sword just to kind of get them down really quickly, or stay in my area and finish them both off with the mountaintop. And then once I had all the kills gone, I would then change my loadout. Now this is where things get just slightly tricky. If you want to try and increase your intellect time, I would have a total of 2 or maybe even 3 armor sets. You'd want to have an armor set for the well. You'd want to have an armor set geared around your mountaintop and anarchy and whatnot for the boss fight, and you would probably want to have an armor set just purely for intellect to reduce how long you're waiting for your super to charge. So we're going to kind of now start from the armor side at the beginning. So I would have on Phoenix Protocol for my well. I made sure I had a helmet and legs with heavy ammo finder and special ammo finder, so I had 2 of each. And then I would make sure my arms were a grenade launcher loader, because I was mostly using a grenade launcher. And then I had on different mods for things like void resist, major resist, and arc resist. And if you have a solar armor, you could do solar resist, which isn't bad considering that those knights spew out lots of fire. So once I got all those knights then down, I would then switch off my armor that was not equipped with ammo scavenger. So it would be gauntlet and chest and my class item to being the intellect armor. And it's because you have lots of time where there's not any adds in that room. So then I just wait in that room where I had all 3 of those echoes, and I would just kill adds until I had my super. Then I would make sure there's no adds available, and then I would switch to my loadout I needed for my Oppressive Darkness, which for me was Eye of Another World, which is an exotic helmet because you're more likely to get more grenades and healing rifts. And then I had on all my other stuff with things like grenade launcher, reserves, and stuff like that. And I'd run around the room, pick up whatever ammo I had, make sure I was at max ammo, which for Anarchy and Mountaintop was about 29 rounds of Anarchy and about 24 rounds of Mountaintop. You might be thinking to yourself, but wait, Anarchy, I thought we had on the sword. Right. We're switching some stuff around. So we do the clearing the kills with the sword. Then once you got those adds gone, you switch to Anarchy, which means when you're killing those knights, you might want to think about, do I need to pick up that ammo brick for heavy ammo? Because you just leave it on the ground, so that way when you switch to your Anarchy, you don't have to wait as long or kill as many waves of adds trying to get your ammo back. If you have something like Taken and Hive armaments, that would be great, because then you're more likely to get more heavy ammo, but those things are going away with Beyond Light. And actually with having 2 heavy ammo finders and special ammo finders, I actually didn't have any issues with ammo. There's a couple of times where I had to wait and kill maybe another round and more adds than I probably would have had to otherwise, but it really wasn't a big deal. Now we are in the actual boss damage phase. At this point, I have on my Oppressive with my Nova Bomb, so I would spawn into the area, I would throw the grenade, hit him with the Nova Bomb, and then hit him with a couple rounds of Anarchy, and then jump off to the side. Make sure you guys are picking either the left or the right side, because that boss is going to shoot at you, that darkness blast thing that teleports you, and if you get hit in that first teleport, you will probably get hit by a second one soon after. That would most likely kill you. So if you do the whole sequence of grenade, super, Anarchy, and then jump to the side, should be golden. Then from that point on, you're really only damaging the boss as the opportunity presents itself. I found myself switching my energy from a Trinity Ghoul to a different bow, and I would throw on a Taken Spec, because I really wanted to be able to one-shot all those Hobgoblin snipers that appear. I found with a bow with the Taken Spec would usually one-shot a sniper as long as it was a critical hit. And so I would do all that initial damage stuff, jump to the side, and I basically only worried about the hobgoblins. When I could, I would throw a grenade at the boss, I'd hit him with some anarchy, I would do some mountaintop, but it was really crucial to take care of those snipers, and to stay inside of that entropy. The whole time you're trying to play catch up with the boss, and your main areas for continuous damage is at the beginning and at the end, because you have two little sections at the end where he's more or less pretty still. You should have plenty of time to be able to catch up and do things to him. And at the beginning, he's just right there for a long time as well. In the middle, he moves rather quickly, probably every 15 seconds or so, and when you have those snipers, you really only got windows of about a couple of seconds to do some damage. Now, when you get to the end, you'll notice there's two snipers at the back. I intentionally would do my best to not kill them, because once the kill disappeared, I would take some safe cover behind one of like the box square dealy pillar things, and I would switch my loadout back to the original when I was killing ads in the kill room, getting ready for boss phase. Because if you don't have on the heavy and special ammo scavenger pieces, which is your helmet and your boots, you are not as likely to get ammo to drop when you kill those two snipers that are at the end. So then you would put on your Trinity Ghoul, which is what I would do because I loved it for the ad clearing. So once I had on all my weapons and I switched around those couple of armor pieces, I would then go and use my Trinity Ghoul to kill those two snipers, because I wanted to enter the next phase with Lightning Rod procced, because it would make it way easier to not have to aim, because when you first enter that next room, there's lots of ads, there's lots of incoming fire. In Trinity Ghoul with the Lightning Rod procced, you just basically have to be in the general ballpark and you'll get some kills and you'll keep that Lightning Rod going. So it's just way better to have that Lightning Rod procced, which is why I would leave those ads open at the end, because I could then get Lightning Rod and I would have a better chance of having heavy and or special ammo drop. And so once I got those two enemies down, then I would switch all my armor to my intellect build, wait for my super to come back up, back to my well, because again I changed from my Voidwalker to my well Warlock, and then I would go and engage into the next fight once I have my well fully charged up. So hopefully this helps you guys out quite a bit. I know this is way more geared towards Warlocks. I know this whole thing was a really long video. I wanted to get something that was a little bit more in depth, because I had watched plenty of guides before and they were like, oh, basically just be Devour Warlock and kill stuff, and I was like, oh, okay, cool, great, and that didn't work for me like at all. And I thought to myself, if I'm going to make a guide, I want it to be different than what I was seeing, because it didn't really help me out a whole lot. It pretty much only told me stuff that I already knew. And so I'm really hoping, giving you guys the idea of, hey, you can just wait unless you're super charged up. You can, in fact, not have taken ornaments and be able to switch things like your heavy around and still be able to have ammo. You just have to have on a couple of ammo finders. You can do this dungeon without being amazing. I don't think I'm a fantastic PvE player. For some reason, getting that stupid Cottontail Ghost Shell was something that was really important to me, and so I dedicated a lot of time into doing this. My goal is with this video that you guys could watch it. You're at this point, and then you give me that comment with the corgi emoji, because that's what we do here on this channel. And then you guys tell me, hey, this was so much easier. Now, if you're wondering how to do the Pit of Heresy for the Harbinger title, feel free to check that out. I have a guide for that one up, as well as for how I did the Pit of Heresy dungeon solo, with a lot of the same kinds of principles being applied. So let me know down below, guys, how this helped out. I really hope you guys all were able to get that solo clear, and I really hope maybe some of you guys are able to get solo flawless because of this guide. I hope to do that one day. I'm not too sure when I'll pull it out. Maybe if I have a snow day tomorrow, because I'm in Colorado and we got like a foot of snow tonight as I'm recording. Then who knows, maybe I'll try it tomorrow. But I thank you guys all so much for watching. Again, subscribe to the channel, like the video, join our eventual Discord server, and become a part of our community. I can't wait to meet all of you guys, and I appreciate each and every one of you. Lastly, make sure you guys check out my Redcon 1 affiliate link and code down below. I love their Wargames product. They just came out with it, and I've been using it, and it's actually been something I've noticed as being an impact, like a good thing for my mental awareness and whatnot when I'm playing. My comp KD goes up. I'm able to do more things of endgame solo when I use that product. And you can also use my code to get 20% off anything that Redcon 1 sells, not just Wargames, but hey, we're a gaming channel, so Wargames is what I'm going to talk about. Thank you guys all so much for watching. I am Church of Caboose. Have a great week and happy grinding, y'all.